G'day and welcome to Redriven. Now, as we film this, petrol prices here in Australia are hovering at around about $2.20 per litre, and those prices seem to be ever increasing, which is totally insane and incredibly depressing for those of us that love cars and love driving or have to drive to or for work. And because of this, we're receiving more and more messages asking what are the best, cheapest and most fuel-efficient cars on the used market. Well, this list provides the answers. But before we get into this, I should mention that even though this list is in numerical order, rather than having place getters from 5th through to 1st, each of these numbers represents a different genre or category of car. All of these cars are highly recommended and they are all really fuel efficient, but because we all have different needs, hopefully one of the cars on this list will tick your boxes. Anyway, look, let's get into this. And first up, it's what we call the obvious choice category. And because it's a 5-door hatch, it also fits into the smallish to medium car category. It's the Toyota Prius. The Prius may have been the butt of a few jokes from the car enthusiast community when it first landed, but with petrol prices accelerating into the same realm as Apple shares, it seems that the Prius may have the last laugh. As we showed in our review video, the link for which is just up there, ignoring the still excellent fuel economy for a second, the Prius offers excellent levels of practicality, safety and tech, granted for its age. Plus it has typical Toyota reliability, backed up by their unparalleled support network, and it has proven longevity, even for the battery pack and the hybrid system. Although with only 73 kilowatts, it's not exactly the most exciting of driving experiences, and the interior can get a little bit rattly with all of its hard recycled plastic interior trim pieces. But besides that, the only other real negative is that it may have a detrimental effect on your image and how cool those around you might think you are. But the important factors are, what do they cost and how much fuel do they drink? Pricing for this, the 3rd generation XW30, will kick off from around about $12,000 at the moment here in Australia. However, we'd recommend pushing that budget a little bit because better examples kick off from around about $16,000. Fuel efficiency wise, you're going to be looking at a claimed figure of 3.9 litres per 100 kilometres, which currently equates to under $9 per 100 Ks. The previous generation Prius is also an option and its pricing ranges from around about $9,000 to say $15,000, but it has a smaller engine, so it's pretty bloody slow. And obviously the levels of safety and tech will be a whole generation older as well. Now, normally when we think affordable, super fuel efficient cars, we think of tiny little nuggets of cars. But the reality is, some of us need something larger. So next up we have our SUV category. And the winner for this category is the Mitsubishi Outlander PHEV, or Outlander PHEV, or... Now, the Outlander that we're talking about here is the ZJ generation from 2014 and 2015. And pricing here in Australia will kick off from around about $20,000, although these things are being snapped up quickly, so they're becoming rare, and thanks to their popularity, there's a high chance these prices may rise. What you get for your money is a 5-door SUV with great practicality, good levels of safety, okay levels of tech, and now that they're getting on a little bit in age, pretty ordinary levels of fit and finish, but they're proving to show really good reliability. And even though the hybrid powertrain might not be the most refined example of plug-in technology, the Outlander is proving to go the distance in terms of longevity. Speaking of distance, these electrically assisted Outlanders are probably best suited to metropolitan areas to get the most out of the hybrid offerings, rather than say long distance hauling. But even then, they do reward smooth and light throttle applications. Okay, now the important stuff. This model and generation of Outlander claims a fuel consumption figure of only 1.9 litres per 100 kilometres. However, realistically, you're never going to see that. What it will most likely do is around about 6 litres per 100 kilometres, equating to approximately $13.50 per 100 kilometres. But what if you want something far more luxurious, like you want to save money on fuel, but you still need to be all fancy schmancy? Well, the car for you is the Lexus CT200H. Okay, look, yes, this is basically a Toyota Prius wearing a classy outfit, but there is more to it than that. The suspension and power delivery have been refined to suit the more premium badge. The interior materials and overall quality leaves the Prius for dead. And while certainly not any sort of performance car, the CT200H is far more enjoyable and refined to drive than its Toyota sibling. Looks-wise, for us, it is still sitting snugly in the world of conservative, and thanks to Lexus appearing to fail to market to anyone under 55, it isn't what we'd call a cool car, but it is loaded with equipment. It has really good levels of technology, especially considering that the examples we're referring to are a decade old. It has a 5-star ANCAP safety rating, and being a Lexus, it's ultra reliable and will probably outlast even the fittest and healthiest of us all. Price-wise, a 2011 or 2012 CT200H can be all yours for as little as $14,000. And fuel efficiency-wise, Lexus claims its fuel consumption figure to be 4.1 litres per 100 kilometres, which, like the Prius, currently equates to around about $9 per 100k journey. But what if luxury isn't your thing? What if you want something more sporty, more entertaining? Well, remember the Honda CR-Z? Yeah, no, we completely forgot about it as well, but we shouldn't have. The CR-Z was simply ahead of its time. Released when filling up your car didn't result in bankruptcy, the CR-Z just failed to really find a market. If you wanted a small, fun car when these were released, you just bought one of the plethora of hot hatches that were on the market at the time. And thanks to those of us that are performance car consumers being obsessed with power figures and acceleration times, the lack of straight line pace and lack of ponies under the bonnet from this funky little Honda did little to get our blood racing at the time. But that's completely missing the point of the CR-Z. Like its spiritual predecessor, the sublime second generation CRX of the 1980s and 1990s, the CR-Z is all about fun in the corners and at normal speeds. Incredibly direct steering, a sporty balanced chassis and low driving position all combine to make this thing fantastic fun to drive for the vast majority of the time, not only when you're planting that right foot. It's commonly forgotten that driving a slow car fast is one of life's greatest pleasures. And when that slow car steers and handles as well as this thing, those that don't get it are just missing out. Also, like the CRX, the CR-Z is deceptively practical. Okay, look, forget about using those rear seats as seats unless you're planning on throwing a 4-year-old back there, but fold that second row down and the CR-Z will carry a load more stuff than you would have anticipated. Pricing wise, even this is a pleasant surprise. You can get yourself into one of these funky looking hatch coupe things for as little as $12,000. Okay, granted, for that price, it's going to be equipped with the underwhelming and potentially soul-sucking CVT transmission rather than the incredibly rare 6-speed manual. And yes, CR-Zs aren't exactly commonplace on the used market, but with a claimed fuel consumption figure of just 4.7 litres per 100 kilometres, you'll only be forking out around about $10.50 for every 100 kilometres travelled. And you're going to be having loads of fun while you're doing it, as long as you never attempt to overtake anything else that is also in motion. Now, before we get to our final category, which is what is the most fuel-efficient car for the least amount of money spent, can I ask a favour? Can you hit those like, subscribe and bell icon buttons? And if you're enjoying Redriven, can you share Redriven as much as you can? The more you do of that stuff, and the more you share Redriven, the more of this sort of content we can make, and hopefully that'd be a good thing. Okay, so many of us just want something that is super affordable, that won't break down, and if it does, it won't cost a fortune to repair, and it has to basically despise even the thought of drinking petrol. So the best, cheapest, most fuel-efficient car that you can buy in Australia right now is the Suzuki Alto. Now, we know these aren't exactly internationally available as such, but if you're watching this from a non-Alto available area, there are other Suzukis out there that offer a very similar recipe, like say the Ignis, the Celerio, and even the Swift. Even in terms of the Alto, depending on where you're watching this from, it can get a little confusing, but we're talking about the 2008 to 2013 Alto from Suzuki's Delhi-based subsidiary Maruti Suzuki, which they actually call the A-Star. And again, depending on where you're watching this from, you might also know this as the Nissan Pixo. But for now, let's just focus on the Aussie variant of the Alto. Even though this little car is all about the budget, the interior quality, the amount of standard equipment that it comes with, and how well it drives are honestly pretty bloody decent for what it costs and what it's designed to do. Around town, the Alto is a solid little package with enough poke to easily handle suburban and city life, while its small dimensions and fast steering make it an absolute breeze to park and maneuver in tight situations. Out on the open road, all of that does start to come undone to a degree, but this was never designed to spend its life on the freeway. It's not bad by any means, it's just a bit out of its comfort zone. Safety-wise, it has a 4-star ANCAP safety rating, and depending on the trim spec, you can end up with a 6-speaker stereo with an iPod input jack, air conditioning, central locking, fog lamps, power steering, and front power windows. Look, I know that doesn't sound all that impressive, but for what it costs, it's pretty bloody good. And how much is it? Well, here in Australia, pricing kicks off from as little as $3,000, with really good examples starting at around about $5,000. And as far as the fuel economy goes, Suzuki claim a figure of just 4.8 litres per 100 kilometres, which will currently set you back around about $10.50 for every 100 kilometres travelled. Look, the Alto is honestly a pretty boring car, and the only aspect of it that might get your blood racing is the fact that it's costing you less in petrol than anything else this cheap, and the fact that if you find one with a solid service history, knowing it will most likely be pretty bloody reliable is also a great feeling. But even if it does blow up, with all the money you've saved, just go and buy another one. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and as always, what did you think of the list? Let us know in those comments below. And remember, can you please hit those like, subscribe, and bell icon buttons, and share Redriven as much as you can? That'd be awesome. See you next time. Be more confident with it, Morris, you dickhead. Now, normally when... Oh, Jesus. Sometimes in reality... F***ing hell, mate. What is going on? As seats unlessen, that's not even a word. Now, before we get to our final category, which is what... Oh, also, a bit of a shout out to Daniel Ricciardo there. If you can see that.